welcome back to another electrifying episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, the podcast where mental wellness meets real life mastery. I'm your host Avik, and today we are unlocking a vault of mental strategies that performers, professionals, and everyday warriors can use to rewire their mindset and build unshakable resilience. So, our guest today is a true game changer. Dr. Albert Bramante. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Albert.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. It's been a great opportunity.
Lovely, lovely. So, before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. Dear listeners, Dr. Albert is a seasoned talent agent with 20 plus years in the entertainment industry, a PhD in psychology, and the certifications in both hypnosis and NLP. So he's the person behind the curtain helping actors land roles on the Broadway, in commercials, TV, and the film. But what makes him truly unique is this: he doesn't just coach the talent, but he transforms minds. Yeah. So Dr. Bramante specializes in breaking the cycle of self-sabotage, helping creative individuals rise above the imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and the fear of success. So whether you are an artist, a leader, or just someone trying to build a more resilient life, then today's episode is your backstage pass to the real inner breakthroughs. So why to wait? Let's dive in. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really, happy to be here again. It's great to connect.
Lovely, lovely. So, I mean, you walked a rare path. I mean, I have to say, like blending entertainment and psychology. So, let's start there. I mean, what drew you to this intersection between uh, performance and the mindset?
Well, I've always been interested in the performing arts. I've also been,
Okay.
an avid student of life. I love learning. I've always loved reading. Ever since growing up, I was a book nerd. I love going to the library where other kids would enjoy playing sports or playing video games. I enjoyed reading, and that was my vice, and that was my kind of guilty pleasure in a sense. So I've always been drawn to the academic world. I wanted to, ever since high school, I kind of was also interested in the arts as well. So was involved in the drama club in high school. I took some theater and acting classes to my undergraduate for electives. And I really enjoyed it. I didn't necessarily want to be an actor myself, but I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed being around the creative space, creative energy, creative professionals. And so, but I was also going to school for psychology. So I did my bachelor's, did my master's. And then I found myself in a situation where I was working with actors, not, in a the capacity I am now, but more of a supportive type of environment. And I really loved it. I really loved being around actors. So I did some soul searching because I really wasn't fitting in too much to the academic world. Even though I was doing very well in my classes, I just really didn't fit well in the circles, the social circles and academia. So I wanted to, but going back to the actors, I really felt connected to the actors. So I did some soul searching. I was like, well, how do I combine both worlds? In a sense. So I started off doing support groups for actors. This is back around 2003. And then, I started to kind of like recommend them for jobs and recommend them for, small films here and there. And they were booking, and they started booking from my recommendations. And I figured, well, why don't I do this as a business? So 2004, I started my first business, as a talent representative. And then I just kept moving, on across the thing. And then during this time, I also went for my PhD, and completed my PhD. And for my thesis, which is kind of like the crux and the foundation for my book, I did it on why do actors self-sabotage. And that's where I became really interested in the concept of self-sabotage and self-doubt and, fear of success and all those factors. And so I did a dissertation on that. And then years later, I said, I want to turn this into a book. And so that's where I am today.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, what to say? Like, do you find that the emotional highs and the lows in the entertainment world mirror the psychological struggles that many people face, even outside of acting?
Yes, I mean, well, I wrote this book with actors, of course, in mind, and that was my intention. However, anybody can benefit from reading this that deals with self doubt and self sabotagement, and it affects almost every industry. No matter what, from every walk of life. So I feel like my work can be applicable to everybody, and so there's a lot of reasons why we self sabotage. One of it is, fear of, I would say is the biggest reason. Fear of failure, fear of change, fear of success, um, which can then also lead to imposter syndrome. So there's a whole host of reasons as to why someone would engage in, self sabotaging behavior in a sense. So I feel like, my intention for writing this book was to start having conversations around this topic. And let's talk about ways to address it.
Exactly, yeah. And I have to say that but that's so true. Like so many people live on a kind of on an emotional stage, like constantly auditioning for the validation or not just in the Hollywood, but in the daily life as well. Or I can say in the scenario of the job search as well. So
Mhm.
everywhere, I mean, this happens.
Absolutely. Whether you're going for a job, an interview, giving a presentation,
Hmm.
uh, or doing any other type of work where you're putting yourself out there,
Hmm.
it definitely can add to this.
Exactly. I totally agree on this. Yes.
Mhm.
And like you often also talk about the self sabotage. So what does it really look like in the practice? I mean, how does it sneak into even the most successful minds?
Well, the one thing is we're human. So even the most
Mm,
successful people, successful professionals, or that we think that are successful by every external metric. Yeah, they're making money, they're generating, leads, they're putting themselves out there. But there's also that self-doubt that comes in, which is I think a human experience. I think we all experience, self-doubt from time to time, which makes us human. Now, the tricky thing about self-sabotage is we don't realize we're doing it initially until like we, really do a reflection. But for most of the time, especially in the beginning or for a good part of it, we're not aware of it. We're not aware that we're doing this. And we're not aware that we're our own worst enemy. I often sometimes say our worst enemy can be staring us back in the mirror. And the reason, it has to do with our subconscious mind. We have a conscious mind, which is, the part of our mind that's aware now we're having this conversation, we're aware of it. There's also big part of our mind that we're not aware of, but that's running the show of our behavior. And if that is not aligned, we can now start to engage in behaviors that are not congruent. So this could be, the professional who's doesn't prepare well, even though they have the training, they have the experience. They don't prepare for that presentation that they should, or they're late to the presentation, or they're late to their actors, they're late to their audition, or they find excuses to not do the thing that they're set out to do. Yeah, unconsciously, the excuses come up. Oh, it may not be worth my time. It's too hard. It's too, it's a burden. I don't think I'm gonna like it. And what that really might be is disguised fear, fear in disguise. And so the important thing is to take note of this and find out what is really going on, and then work in that area and change that. So it takes a lot. It takes. I often say sometimes having a coach, a no nonsense coach, or somebody who can point out to you, um, and call you out, when this is happening, because it does happen a lot, to a lot of people. But that's how it looks like, and to the average person who's doing this, they may not even realize. They might think like, nobody, the world is against me, or nobody, I can't do anything right. And what a lot of times what's really going on is either they're chasing the wrong opportunities, or they're not presenting themselves in the optimal way when they have the right opportunities. So, and that's how it can
Exactly,
look.
man. Hmm. So, like, uh, if I have to say this way, I mean, how can someone begin to recognize when self sabotage is showing up as a kind of logic? Or, if I have to say, it's realism in the thinking. So, what do you say? I mean,
Yeah, and that's a good thing. I look for patterns.
uh-huh.
Like look for like routine patterns. This is always happening. You're always late to the appointment. You're, always find yourself being unprepared. When you go into meetings or go into, interviews, or you go into, projects, and then start to figure out what's really happening here. So in my book, I talk about there's a model personality called the 5-factor model, which, is five universal traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And neuroticism refers to our own um, reactivity to stress. And when somebody's high in neuroticism, they get, affected by things very easily. They get very thrown off their game. And what I found in my study was that people that are high in neuroticism and low in conscientiousness will often start to engage self-sabotage. So start looking at your conscientiousness. Are you missing, are you not preparing enough for appointments? Are you not leaving the house enough time to get to your appointments? Are you not preparing enough, for that? You're not studying enough. If you're a student, maybe you're not studying as many hours as you should be. So start taking stock of anytime that you feel like something didn't go right or didn't go in your favor, start taking stock of what's going on here and look for patterns. And again, sometimes having a trusted advisor or trusted coach who has nothing, nothing in stake as far as like coasting, that can really tell you like it is, or give you the, no, no holds barred approach. Someone who can give you a tough love and say, hey, you're contributing to the problem. And that's when you start realizing that, um, I might be contributing to this. I might be contributing to, the no's, or the missed opportunities or failures. And that's when you start doing that, that's when, you can start examining patterns and then changing them. Because once you know it, then you can change it. Knowing it is like, really half the battle.
Amazing. And also, if I have to say, like, uh, we often disguise fear as rationally, like, I am just being practical. And when we are pulling the plug on our own potential. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm. So, also, the entertainment industry is the full of rejection sometimes, uh, but so is life as well. So, how do you train performers or even yourself to bounce back instead of breaking down?
So to bounce back, I'm to realize that we're in control.
Okay.
we're in the that's the important thing is to realize that we are in control and that not to get affected by it is to know that this is a human experience. So
Mm.
moving forward, not dwelling in the past. So now that you know this, so now the next step, what can you do moving forward? Now, I have a little bit of a background in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and one of the basic tenets of NLP is there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So look at the missed opportunities as feedback. What can you do better? So even if you bomb that presentation or we're going to give that interview and it didn't go in your favor and you really felt like you messed it up, look at it from an objective way and say, okay, what did I do wrong? And now what can I do better the next time? So that my next interview or my next presentation is going to be, 5 or 10 times better because now I know what to do. So you look at almost like failure as feedback and as your friend.
Mm. Got it.
And as your companion, and then you'll start fearing it less because now it's just going to be feedback. So if anything, you're going to get some great lessons out of it. Even if it doesn't go in your direction, it's still going to give you some great solid feedback.
Mm. Exactly. Wow. And like if someone listening right now feels stuck in a loop, um, uh, sabotaging themselves, doubting their voice, what's the one mindset shift they can make today to begin breaking free? What do you say?
To be connected, I often say being connected to your why. And
Mm.
why are you doing this? What's the source of the reason of your motivation? Why are you setting up whether it's a performer, whether it's a
Mm.
coach, whether it's a young, lawyer or a doctor? What is your source? Why are you doing this? What's the main reason?
Mhm.
And connect to that and just keep yourself motivated on that and keep going back to your why. Why is this important?
Hmm. True. So, I mean, what do you say to people who fear the success? Um, I'm thinking how to put that. Fear the success just as a failure.
Just as a failure. Well,
Mm.
the reason, it has a lot to do with putting yourself out there. See, actors, when
Mhm.
they audition, especially, they're bearing their soul in a
Mhm.
sense. They're bearing their, full on um services out there. And being vulnerable. And a lot of times people know because this is one of the performing arts industry is one of the most toughest industries I could say out there, the most competitive. There's that hundreds of thousands of actors with only a limited number of jobs available. So the one thing is to stop taking the rejection personal, person.
Mhm.
It's not reject. As a matter of fact, it's not rejection.
Yeah.
It's just only one person can get it over hundreds of people that are applying for a role. Only one person's going to get it. It has nothing to do with you. It's not personal. So
Yeah.
take the personal out of everything, even when you don't, if you don't land that job interview or,
Mm.
you don't get the job from that job interview, start looking at that from an objective way. It's not personal.
Mm.
I wasn't the right fit for that job, and that's it. And then move on, and keep remembering why you're doing this. And then also, I talk about this in the book, and I talk about the concept of a happy file, which means a happy file is you take an actual hard copy journal. You keep a journal. I often say I think it's best to do hard copy,
Mm.
and you document all of your successes, whether it's a compliment on a performance or compliment on a presentation
Mm.
or compliment on a project you worked on, and you start documenting these things.
Uh, mm.
And then when you're having those moments of self doubt popping up, pull out that happy file,
Mm.
and now it'll remind you. It'll reinforce your why
Mm.
in a sense.
Amazing. That's amazing. I would say, yeah. And uh, not only amazing, I'd say powerful reframe. Like success doesn't need to be a scary thing. It can be safe, grounded, even soulful also. The shift changes everything. That's the most part of it. Yeah. So also before we wrap, it might sound contradictory, but some people argue that positive psychology creates the toxic positivity. So how do we balance that optimism with the honest emotional expression? So what do you say?
Well, the difference between toxic positivity
Mm-hmm.
and just general positivity is humility,
Okay.
being humble, being humble, and knowing that you're a work in progress in a sense.
Mm,
Whereas people with toxic positivity or taking toxic self-esteem believe that they have everything they need. They don't need to learn anymore. They don't need to train anymore. And so the one way to keep yourself humble is to adopt the mindset that you're always learning or always
mm,
evolving. I think the moment that every moment that we're living, we're evolving. So
mm,
I have a PhD myself. I never stop learning. I'm always reading. I'm always taking courses. I'm always listening up different podcasts because I want to gain knowledge.
mm,
So I think that it's important to um work in that way and to remain humble. And I think that's the difference now
mm,
is along with believing that you deserve a seat at the table or that you
mm,
deserve to be successful. The difference between I would say toxic or fragile self-esteem positivity would be again that think that you're better than other people and that you put other people down and that you're not open to criticism. Now, there's a strong relationship I feel between toxic high self-esteem and low self-esteem.
mhm,
Very often, um, what we see as a factor with toxic high self-esteem, a person is not open to feedback.
mm,
So sometimes I'll find this a lot with some actors. When you give them feedback, whether it's about their performance and the marketing materials or their portfolio, they get really defensive.
sure. Exactly.
And so part of, I think, being a true consummate professional in any discipline is to be coachable.
True.
And, knowing that we're not perfect. And I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Exactly. Amazing. So, Dr. Albert, I mean, this conversation felt like a masterclass in inner liberation. Uh, and also, you have reminded us that mindset isn't just a kind of buzzword, it's the operating system behind every choice, every belief, every breakthrough. So,
Mhm.
for the listeners, whether you are an artist or an accountant, a dreamer or a doer, your mind is the stage. And you are both the director and the lead. Yeah. So rehearse love, rehearse courage, rehearse resilience. And when the spotlight comes, you will be ready. I know this sounds something something like poetic, but yes, this is true. And to dive deeper into Albert's transformative work, his courses, his strategies, and the psychological tools that he shares with the top performers, check out the links into the show notes. I'll put all the links here. And with this hope, until next time, this is your host Avik reminding you to keep your mind healthy, your spirit bold, and your dreams in motion. So break the pattern, rewire the story, and live the life. So, thank you so much.